Let's take a closer look at the King's Gambit. It was found in 1497, one of the earliest chess opening. It starts with e4 and then d5. Pushing f4 will be the King's Gambit. White challenges the center with the f4 thrust. In many games, black will take the f-pawn, leading to the King's Gambit accepted. The rewards of playing the King's Gambit is the following. We get rapid development with knight f3, aggressive chess style, great initiative with pawn pushes, psychological pressure from challenging your opponent, and complex dynamic and sharp positions for those quick on their feet, and the risk involved risking castling privileges. But who need those anyways? A potential slightly worse pawn structure, fewer solid endgame, black plays like engine-like precision, and it is fairly risky for novice players. Is the King Gambit dead? The last chess world championship that played the King's Gambit was Emanuel Lasker versus Dostoevsky in 1910. Hikaru Nakamura also won with the King's Gambit. Why did King's Gambit decline in popularity? And especially why in top-level super grandmother chess? Last question, should you play the King's Gambit? Before answering this question, we need to find out when it was popular, which was the Romantic chess era. What is Romantic chess, you might ask? Does it involve romance between the chess pieces? Of course not. But Romantic chess is all about gambits and traps. You win with style. Romantic chess was a style of chess popular in the 18th century until its decline in 1880. It was a style emphasizing quick, tactical maneuvers. One common opening was the King's Gambit during that era. Any opening or moves that involves gambits, traps, mating nets, or creative deflection was romantic. Winning chess was all about winning with style. One of the most famous romantic player, Paul Morphy. And in the same era of 1840, we have Howard Stanton, amongst many chess players. Finally, Boris Spassky. Although he was not alive during the Romantic chess era, he had similar style and boldness. Spassky even beat Bobby Fischer in the King's Gambit, although he did not play it in. By the 1920s, e4 openings declined in popularity with the rise of the hypermodern school. With Aaron Nemzowitsch as its founder, many players switched to d4 and c4 openings for its positional play. After World War II, around 1950s, e4 openings became more popular again, with David Bronstein being the first grandmother in decades to use the King's Gambit in serious play. He inspired Boris Spassky to also take up the King's Gambit. Right from the opening, black has 0 point for advantage. This is a big advantage statistically. Strong title player know the lines to equalize advantage and neutralize the attack. In just 40 moves, we can reach this position. You can easily reach very complicated positions that require high precision and accuracy. This is hard to achieve consistently. I found this chess database online for Leela versus Stockfish. White has a fine win rate using the King's Gambit. If black takes, then the winning chances starts to decrease. The best move against the gambit is to accept the gambit. Your main idea is try to defend the f pawn and or develop your pieces to attack the vulnerable king. If white is not prepared properly, you can checkmate in a couple of moves. Next we have the king's gambit accepted. Classical variation. Black defends the pawn, but slightly weakens the kingside position. But it is tricky for white to try to take back material. Just hold on to your advantage and win the end game. Bishop c5. This move opts to decline the gambit, placing the bishop on an active and aggressive square. This defense leads to a more positional and strategic battle compared to the sharp lines of the king's gambit accepted. For a more aggressive approach, black can play 2d5, which immediately challenges white's central pawn on e4 and strikes at the heart of white's setup. This is a counter gambit, where black sacrifices their own pawn to disrupt white's pawn structure and gain active piece placement. Highly tactical and forces white into awkward positions, which often leads black to better games. Bobby Fischer wrote an article called A Bust to the King's Gambit, where he said, "In my opinion, the King's Gambit is busted. It loses by force." Let's see what Bobby Fischer had cooked up. Fischer's defense is absolutely insane. It starts with d6. White takes the center, black pushes g5. White counter-attacks g4, kicks the knight back to its developing square. Here are some other famous players. Felider thought the gambit was a draw with best play from both sides, while Tarasht hated the king's gambit. The man who solved the king's gambit was an international master who used 3,000 processor cores running for months to analyze all lines. After black accepts the king's gambit, he dominated the computer chess scene with his engine. You won't believe his shocking results. The confidence was 99.9999999% after 11 million hours of computation. The only move that draws for white is bishop e2 in the king's gambit accepted. But however, this is a prank, an April Fool's Day prank by ChessBase and the international master. Here are the other variations in the king's gambit. I won't bore you with all the details, so let's move on. The king's gambit is not doomed in shorter time formats. Watch all these games I've found on ChessBase to see king's gambit played by grandmasters. We have Nepo, Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura. This gambit is still alive to this day. You should play the king's gambit with these points in mind. Play it during any rapid blitz event. If you know any king gambit's theory, then test your romantic skills. If you're feeling aggressive, then perfect rapid development into a complex position where you can outwit your opponent, and finally a hidden weapon in your repertoire. Don't play the king's gambit in the following situations. Grandmaster classical games. Opponent knows the theory. Opponent watch this video, which spurs them to research. If you need to castle every game, this opening isn't for you. Last point, King's Gambit is all about romantic tactical chess. If you want a positional game, then stick to d4. What's your thoughts on the King's Gambit? Leave them below here. I would appreciate a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.